14th, 2021 meeting of the Municipal Solid Waste Management and Resource Recovery Advisory Council, again on Zoom. 1 year ago today, we were together in person there in Austin, and of course, April was canceled, and July and October were both Zoom meetings, and again, here we are in January on Zoom again. So hoping that we are soon to turn a corner, and that before the end of this fiscal year that we will be back in person once again. That's so welcome everybody again. And what we did last time that seemed to work well was go ahead and ask Diane to at least call roll, and then following that we'll kind of go through, and it's you know, everybody will at least introduce themselves and explain what sector they represent as a member of the advisory council. So with that, I'll turn it over to Diane for roll call.
Okay. Trent Perez. Scott Trebus.
Here.
Risa Weinberger. David Yonke.
Here, and I'm representing the financial community.
Heather Douglas.
I'm here. I'm not sure why I showed up as a guest today, but I'm here representing a private environmental conservation organization, the North Texas Corporate Recycling Alliance.
Holly Holder.
Here and representing licensed professional engineers working in the solid waste management field of work.
Okay. Kevin is not attending. Mr. Martinluck, he's not attending today. I received an email, so I know he's not coming. Cheryl Murgo.
Here, represent Cheryl Murgo with the Houston Galveston Area Council, representing a planning region.
Chuck Rivette.
Hey, good morning. I represent a professional with experience operating a commercial solid waste landfill. And for the record in the discussion, I have the grayest hair of anyone on this Zoom call. Okay.
We just use dye, Chuck.
Yes.
Second that.
Jeffrey Mayfield.
Good morning. I am here, excuse me, with North Texas Municipal Water District, and I represent a public solid waste district or authority.
Richard McHale.
I'm here with the City of Austin, representing city and county solid waste agencies.
Scott Pasternak.
Hi, good morning. This is Scott Pasternak representing or with Burns and McDonnell and representing the general public.
David Dillard.
Here, Judge Dillard here, representing counties underneath 25,000 people.
Okay. That concludes roll call. Just to FYI, Commissioner Willerton is no longer eligible. He has retired. So he's no longer on the council, as well as Commissioner Pitts.
Hey,
Diane, Trent joined us. So
thanks. Sorry, I had to step away for just a minute, but it's Trent Perez. I'm representing cities from 75,000 to 100,000, at least until the next census.
Okay, great. And I have not heard that Risa was not going to attend, so she may just be delayed. So, but that should conclude our roll call. Holly.
Great. Thank you so much, Diane, and thank you for everybody being here this morning. I would say we will then turn it over to Charlie Fritz to give us our waste permit condition update.
Before that, Holly, do you want to see who else is as guests or on the?
Yes, thank you so much, Diane. Yeah, if you're a guest, if you would please introduce yourself.
Or staff as well that are presenting or here available.
We have a whole lot of people there. That'll take a while. We got a lot of people.
Yeah, let's
Okay.
skip that
Okay,
because
that's fine.
there's a ton of people on here.
Okay, well,
Yeah, people-
we can pick it up through our, when we do the highlights, we can pick up the list through the
Yeah.
chat. The
What
participant.
about staff? Should we go ahead and get staff introduced?
Sure, I can
There's
do,
a several staff on here.
yeah, I'll do kind of our waste permit staff, and then anybody else talking can, when they talk, they can introduce themselves. So yeah, I'm Charlie Fritz, Deputy Director of the Waste Permits Division. Chance, you want to go?
Oh, okay. Just, yeah, Chance Gooden, MSW Section Manager, TCEQ.
Diane Barnes, TCEQ, MSW Permit Section.
Bria
Patterson, TCEQ, MSW Permit Section.
Okay, and yeah, that's our kind of main support staff for these meetings. And then I'll let other waste permit staff or other agency staff introduce themselves when they have a topic that they're talking on. Does that work, Holly?
That works great. Thank you,
Okay.
Charlie.
All right, thank you, Charlie.
Ready for me to go, Holly?
Go ahead. Hey, let's talk about the legislative session that is upon us.
Cool. Yep, so I'm Charlie. In case I can't remember who we've told now, and it's been I guess a month and a half, I did say Deputy Director with the agency has kind of done a name change type, in name only, honestly, for between our division directors and our office directors. Previously, our division directors were known as directors. We are now deputy directors, and office directors, so Brent Wade, are now office directors. So I didn't explain that right, but so now I'm deputy director. So don't get that confused. I didn't move. I'm still here, still at the division level. So that happened agency-wide a couple of months ago. I can't remember if I think that was after our last MSWRRAC meeting. So just if you see the title change, don't freak out. For legislative notes, session is going on, started yesterday. We've been in pre-filing since early November. And so far, at least for us, for bill filing, it's been business as usual. We've been getting a normal number of bills. They have all been repeats. I haven't seen a bill that's new and inventive, at least on the waste side. For waste permits, there hasn't been anything, any new bills. So everything we've looked at so far has been previously filed bills. We've analyzed 16 bills that had some impact to waste permits, more of a larger agency impact. So think public notices that impact air, water, and waste, public participation procedures, various rulemaking impacts. So more agency-wide type bills we've spent most of our time on so far that impact the agency overall. And there were we have analyzed 2 bills that directly impacted waste permits, and both repeats from previous years. The first one is Darby's local government and permitting process bill. That was a repeat from last year. That one's HB 631. And then Kane's HB 753 about franchise fees and service contracts. That one, we did analyze it, but because it does impact waste permitting in a way, it is impacting health and safety codes that we have we kind of have purview over, but really, if you ask me, we don't have a lot of input on that specific bill. So we watch it, we make sure we are aware of it. But if you ask me for more details on that one, I'm going to say I won't have a lot more input on that one. So those are the 2 so far that we've kind of have most of the impact so far. Waste-wise, I mean, my perspective I'm providing here is just looking at waste permitting, our division. It's we're going along. overall, I think the agency is dealing with, there's kind of some more higher priority things going on. So for better, if that's good for you or bad for you. But that's kind of what we see at the agency level, is that we are getting our typical bills. We are getting bills that we've seen before. I imagine we'll get some more bills filed directly impacting waste permits, but they will probably be bills that were previously submitted. And agency-wide, there are, I'd say there are some higher topics going on right now, but waste is still up there. Any questions about the legislative session?
This is Dave Yankee. Charlie, if I can ask, and just coming from the finance side, I know last year there was one on franchise fees, that limiting or capping franchise fees. It may still be too early or what have you, but have you seen or heard of that one?
Yeah, that's Kane's bill.
Okay.
So HB 753. That's the one that we analyzed it. We analyzed it because it impacts Texas Health and Safety Code, Chapter 363. So we want to make sure to be aware of it. We don't have a lot of input on it because we do kind of, while we have authority to regulate solid waste management in Texas, the franchise fees and service contract limits are kind of start to get outside of our purview. So we're aware of it, but we don't have much to input on it.
Sure. All right. Thank you.
So really not as robust as it was 2 years ago, but at least it's got a few things to keep you busy. But by and large, it's not as heavy solid waste as it was in 2019, I guess it was.
I am getting that sense, but I don't want to jinx myself. But I am. It is appearing that way.
Okay.
That there. Waste permitting, municipal solid waste permitting is a hot topic, and we just may be overshadowed by some other hotter topics going on right now.
Anyone have any other questions legislative wise for Charlie? Okay, Charlie.
Okay, so the recycling list. We sent out, this is a draft recycling list, and where this is coming from is an agency determination that kind of wanting to take a look at the recycling program. There's been a couple of fires at some recycling facilities. There was one in late November, early December of last year in Houston, maybe in November now that I think about it. There was one a couple months previous to that in San Antonio where they were big fires. They made the news, pictures in the newspaper. May or may not have caused evacuations. I don't think they did, but still big enough to make the newspaper, still not a great looking picture. And I know they aren't as big as some of the explosions happening in Houston, but still it's something that's happening enough that the agency is becoming like it's something we definitely want to look at. So we decided we want to take a look at the recycling program. Right now, we're going down the road of probably it's going to be a holistic review of the program. So looking at safety, how these fires are occurring, they can have the potential to impact the public. So wanting to look at the safety aspect of it and knowing we had a internal discussion that, yeah, there's some pretty significant compliance issues at a lot of these facilities. Some are completely exempt from any authorization requirements from the agency, and a lot of them have NOI, and then some others, a lot of them have NOIs as well. So there's some level of agency oversight and some not, but at the ones we see, there do seem to be a significant amount of compliance issues. So that's kind of what we want to look at the overall the overall program. We want to encourage, recycling is something we want to encourage, promote, but we can't forget the environmental impacts of what's going on. And these do seem to be, we want to make sure these are operating properly. We want to make sure and see if there's a way we can get away from this boom or bust type situation where we have recycling facilities pop up because something market-wise really promotes the quick collection of recyclable materials. And then all of a sudden the bottom falls out and we're left with these stockpiles that they have no way to clean them up. So really want to figure out a way to promote the long-term viability of these recycling type facilities. So that's where this is coming from. We are creating a stakeholder group to provide input on the scope, and then when we get to it, on rule revisions to the recycling rules. Like I said, kind of a broad scope right now. We could narrow that in the future, but that's kind of where we're going right now, and the purpose behind this stakeholder group. So we came up with a list. We were focusing on, we wanted to make sure we were aiming to cover as a good number of the industry segments through trade groups. And so that's kind of the list that we submitted, or not submit, but provided y'all, is what our first attempt. So this is the first version of trying to cover most of the industry segments, or all of the industry segments through various trade groups. And one thing we wanted to do was, we did not want this to be an open enrollment, open invitation for everybody to join. We did want to be pretty, we did want to be specific. We didn't want to have everybody join and then just have a mess trying to get through comments. So we did want to be strategic in who we asked to be on the committee or stakeholder group. So that the list we provided is our first draft. That here's the trade groups we would reach out to, and we're hoping that they cover the necessary industry segments, and then just ask if they want to participate in this stakeholder group. So that's what our intent was, and we wanted to bring it to this group to see, one, if there's any industry segments that we were missing, or did we cover too many? And by industry segments, I mean kind of as going through the process: transportation, collection facilities, MRFs, end users, those type of industry segments. So are we missing any, or did we include too many? And then are there any other trade groups, specific people that we're missing? So I'll leave. That's where we were going. That's why we brought it to everybody here for input. So I'd love to hear your thoughts and comments. Looking through the list, need to add anybody, need to take anybody off.
Okay, Charlie, while everyone's looking at that, just a couple of questions. When are you looking at this group getting together or starting to meet? Are you looking at monthly meetings or quarterly? What's your end goal? When are you trying to come up with your recommendations?
Haven't really gotten that part yet, but I imagine it would not be intrusive. It would probably at quarterly meetings, and maybe when we actually get to rules, maybe we would get down to monthly meetings, but not looking to make it something that really does become a burden to the members, the stakeholder group.
Does anyone see any group that they feel should be that's not on the list that they feel should be included?
This is Cheryl with MSWRRRAC with HJC. I'm not sure if it needs to be included, but I don't see anything about electronics. I think we're looking at more traditional recycling, but I wasn't sure if electronics needed to be included.
I mean, we are kind of, if we are looking at more probably traditional recycling, just because, yeah, we're looking at the facilities that take recyclable materials, whether they're exempt from the regulations completely or those ones that get an NOI, a notice. So I think Chance, correct me if I'm wrong. We are probably, electronics are probably outside the scope based on our recycling program. Okay. So yeah,
I don't think that's hard.
okay. So yeah, if there's something, if they are part of this, I mean, looking based on what I described, if they are somehow get wrapped up, I'd be happy to include somebody, but looking for y'all's input to see if they should be considered an industry segment.
Cheryl, this is Heather Douglas. There are actually 3 members of the Star Business Council who are electronic recyclers, so they can be represented through that group as well.
Okay.
And Charlie, this is Scott Pasternak. I think it's a pretty comprehensive list and actually looks pretty consistent with the list that's for the recycling market development plan. So I know a lot of the folks that are on that. One thought would be, I think it's really important that you have ISRI listed there as you do. But the person you have listed in Mel Wright, Mel is much more focused on the metals and the scrapyard side of it. So I think it would be important to identify an individual or people within ISRI that are more focused on the more traditional MRFs that you all are targeting. And that might just be more of an effort to contact ISRI at a national basis just to see who they would recommend for participation in Texas.
Okay, most definitely. I added a note to make sure to ask for traditional contacts or somebody with traditional MRFs.
Yep. Okay. Great.
Charlie, I'm sorry, Charlie. This is Risa Weinberger. A couple of things. I had responded to the email with that list originally. Maybe I misunderstood what the focus of that group was going to be. I had suggested that you add the apartment association only because I was thinking in terms of the regulated community rather than processors and authorized facilities. So maybe I missed the boat when I added that. But the next question that I have is, when you talk about composters, there are composters that are recyclers because they have NOIs as recyclers. If you understand the distinction I'm making, an NOI for composting and an NOI for recycling. Are you targeting this narrowly to the people who are regulated through NOIs for recycling, or are you looking at this more broadly to all the composters?
Right now, my thought would be we are focused on recycling, not composters.
Okay,
because,
so I'm saying is there are composters that are considered recyclers, and then there are composters that are considered composters that have NOIs for composting or registration, registered facilities or permitted facilities. It's really the NOI composters, the registered folks, and the permitted folks that I'm asking about. All of those.
Yeah, it would be. It's probably more material focused. That composters will not be brought into this because of the material they are recycling. That we are focusing on more of the traditional recycling activities. Does that help?
Yeah, well, okay. The reason I got the impression that you were looking at composters was because the stakeholder list or the focus list, whatever, that you sent out had the Texas Compost Council and other composting groups on there, which is what made me think you were looking at it at least as broadly as the composters that are regulated as recyclers, if not all the rest of the composters.
For right now, let's say that they are. When we get down to actually, and because right now, like I said, the scope is still something we're trying to figure out. So okay. Yeah, I do see, we do have Compost Council on there. That I think the agency's intent right now is focusing on the ones that do cause issues, the ones that catch on fire, the ones that the boom and bust type facilities that one example is asphalt shingles. That's high on our radar right now. So let me say that, yeah, let's start out with at least asking for representatives from those types of facilities. I don't imagine that we may narrow the scope in a couple of months or a couple of, as we get further down the road, we may narrow the scope down some.
Okay, well, to the extent that you want to do that, you've already got the Texas Compost Council on there. You might or might not want to consider adding the U.S. Composting Council, which is a completely different group.
Okay. Okay.
Risa, you broke up. What was is it the U.S. Compost Council? Is that what you said?
Right. There's the Texas Compost Council that's part of STAR, and then there's the U.S. Composting Council, which is completely unrelated.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, Charlie, this is Chuck. It's a very comprehensive list. It seems to me it's pretty heavily weighted towards end users. Aluminum Association, American Beverage Association, Carton Council, Glass Packaging Institute. Those are all users of recyclers. You really don't have any operators on there. You could argue correctly that National Waste and Recycling Association in one way represents operators, but I'll tell you that the Texas chapter of that group is not representative of many of the larger companies, ourselves included, for lots of reasons that we could talk about later. The other issue, and I understand wanting to go through associations just for hands off, but if you're talking about having a problem with the operations of facilities, you've now put in at least one layer, maybe two layers of buffers between the actual operators and getting the information to you. So let's just take National Waste and Recycling Association, which is mostly in Texas, a conglomeration of very, very small haulers. Very little representation by recycling MRFs. So we'll jump on and we'll try to give our input to them, and we'll give it to their whatever council they'll set up, and their council will give it to their one representative, and then their one representative will come to you. And we're now 3 layers removed from having direct feedback from someone who actually puts on a yellow vest, a hard hat, and walks the site. And I know you don't want to turn it into a regulated community free-for-all, but I encourage you to consider at least getting some boots on the ground operators on the list for direct feedback, not filtered feedback, but direct feedback.
Okay. Yeah, most definitely. I will admit that we received this list as part of, it was mostly used to create the various studies David Greer's group has done. So that is why it looks heavily on the back end, the manufacturer's part. So that's why we brought it to y'all for this input of who are we missing? Are the trade groups that we have here represent this the scope that we want to obtain? So yes, thank you definitely for that. We want to make sure that our intent is try to use trade groups, but if they're not going to get the representation that we need, definitely want that input on where else we can go. So thank you for that.
Yeah, thank you very much for considering.
Charlie, why don't we ask everyone, because I know some people probably are just looking at it for the first time. Let's give everybody at least a few days to mull this over and then respond to the email that Diane sent out of any recommendations that you would make to be included on this list. And I would ask if everybody could do that no later than 1 week from today. I don't want this to drag on. Let's tomorrow's Friday, obviously, but by this time next Thursday on the 21st, let's just put a deadline by noon, January 21st, that if you have any organizations or companies, as I agree with Chuck, I think if we are going to be discussing operational issues, then we really need to have those folks involved in the day-to-day included. let's give everybody till noon next Thursday, or the 21st, to speak now or forever hold your peace. So if you've got some names you'd like to include, let's respond to this email that Diane sent out and give them those names that they can kind of look at and digest and put together a stakeholders group from that. So does anyone else on the council have any comments they'd like to make?
Hey, this is Dave. Can I ask a question? Because I empathize for Charlie. The list could get cumbersome and all of a sudden pretty unwieldy. And when I had been looking at the list before and some of your goals with this, with that said, does it make sense that a number of these should be struck from the list? Because that's kind of, I'm wondering, for instance, is the and maybe I'm missing something, but for instance, is the Aluminum Association, American Beverage Association, do you think they would have valuable input to this process? Because I guess I'm asking Charlie, what's the top thing, what do you want to accomplish from this? In 30 seconds, what would be your dream as far as what comes out of this?
We would want to look at the operators, the facilities that are collecting the material and processing it, that we can create regulations that still promote and encourage recycling to divert the waste stream from the landfills, but in an environmentally protective manner, that we stop this boom and bust cycle. We stop these rogue operators from operating outside, or with minimal, they get an authorization and then completely go outside the bounds of that operation. So that's what we're looking at.
Sure, thank you. So I would like other folks' input on this. To me, then, it seems like some of these folks may not be applicable for the list, like the first couple I mentioned. And so at this point, this is when I always turn to Chuck for an opinion.
Wow, I have an opinion, David. That's scary. Yeah, I stay with where I was. I don't know. STARS represents a lot of recyclers, and so that's a good form. In theory, National Waste and Recycling Association does, and it does nationally. But the Texas chapter is just not as robust. Again, for lots of reasons, and I just don't know of any of the other groups there that actually represent private processors. Now, Texwana, that's a great list, and they're a very robust organization, and they represent cities, and they have very structured meetings, and Holly, you've participated with them for years, and you'll get some good solid feedback from the municipal operations through Texwana, I think. Jeff, do you agree with that? Yeah. But I just don't know about the other list, and I wish I could say, oh, there's the one, this is the one industry group. If you would just add this association, it'll be the big umbrella. But I just don't know that there is one here in Texas. There are in other states, but I just don't know. I've sent a note out to our recycling team and asked them for input, and I'm still waiting for it a little bit, but we'll see if we can give you some solid feedback.
My question, and then I'm done, is I don't know if you want specific companies, but if you're in Texas, there's 2 or 3 companies, and of course, 2 of them are on here, Waste Management, Republic, that do a lot of operate here in so it would seem potentially you might want them. I'm just throwing that out, and that's my last comment.
Yeah. Most definitely.
Dave, you kind of broke up when you mentioned who that other one was. I couldn't hear it. I can guess who it was, but I didn't hear you.
Waste Management and Republic.
I would throw Balcones on the list also.
Sure.
And FCC, if you're going to make that list.
Sure. Yeah.
And Charlie, if it's helpful, we can share with you just only the names of some of those companies from who we contacted for the our recent survey, if that's helpful to provide you with some of the contact information if you want to go that direction in terms of reaching out to specific companies, which I do think for what you're looking to accomplish, to have that more direct interaction based on what Chuck described earlier, I think would make a lot of sense. And yeah, I think there is some value with still communicating with some of the trade associations so that they, so that to the extent if you don't capture all the individual companies that you do that via the trade associations, but based on the discussion this morning from others, you know, I think the organizations that were just recently mentioned are really the key ones. I would also add to that the C&D Recycling Association, since you do have several C&D MRFs in the state. And Paul Kuhar is listed there, and he's presented before the council before, but he has a C&D MRF up in the Dallas area, so I think he would be a good person to look to include as well.
Okay, yeah, most definitely. If there's, when you take a look at the list and think some trade groups on there that just aren't going to provide anything substantive, feel free to cross them out, and we'll take it, look at it, and and definitely if you think there's companies on there as well that would do a good job representing, providing input. Like I said, this was a starting list, starting point, so definitely looking for input. And so just, yeah, provide those. And Scott, yeah, definitely if you have a list of companies, we'll look at those too. And we'll make sure to make a representative of the industry.
Okay, Charlie, anything else?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And again, let's try to get any comments to the staff sooner rather than later, so they can get their list finalized and we can move forward. All right, Chance.
Hey,
Give us our permit section update. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Right.
Can y'all hear me okay? Good. Yeah, we obviously are remaining in telework mode, and although we do have staff going in, our most frequent staff member that attends the office is Mr. Steve O'Deal. And we really do appreciate his attendance in the office, because there's always something that comes up and we say, hey, can you go? And he's always there to do that. So we really appreciate at least someone being up there. So very much social distancing when you only have one person up in an office that holds hundreds. So anyway, it's been going well. I think this is becoming a norm for us. You know, we kind of, when we hit the floor back in March running, we were in a good position to have already electronic processes in place. So it really wasn't that much of an adjustment for us. But as we've said, you know, a lot of other sections and divisions in the agency weren't up as to speed as we were. And so we had to kind of get those outlined. And I think that's all happened now. So we're 100% operational from, you know, receiving to issuance of a permit now. So that seems to be working well, and don't see anything, you know, changing in the future. But I guess saying all that, you know, I'm self-reflecting here. How is it working for you? You know, how is it that our new changes and stuff, how is that all working out for you? I'd like to hear from you guys on that. Have y'all heard anything from your folks that you represent? Anything that we could tweak a little bit to make life a little bit better in the virtual world we live in?
Hey, Chance, this is Scott. I'll kind of chime in because I've been working a lot with you folks, and I think it's been pretty smooth. You know, I haven't had any issues. I know we traded a lot of phone calls back and forth, but for the most part, anything that was submitted or we needed to discuss or address, they were handled in a very timely manner. And I would like to give kudos to Steve because he was my main contact through all that.
Chance,
Okay,
this is Risa. My main frustration has been fairly minor, and that's been around not being able to walk into the central records room and dig into the files and you know, see what's on paper there. Other than that, even given that, working with your staff remotely has been remarkably responsive. I've been impressed. It's not perfect, you know, because people all have their constraints, but what they've been able to do has been really helpful. And like I said, my only frustration is not being able to walk in and say, "Give me this file, I want to look at it."
Yeah, I understand that you have to make an appointment for that, and that's not just for the general public. Staff, internal staff also have to make an appointment too. So it's across the board if we want to go into that central file room to look up stuff. So, but there is, you know, I know that we're still asking for hard copies, and but we are doing some internal discussions on, you know, transitioning everything away from hard copies. But we have to have something in place to do that we can manage everything electronically, and that really is hinging on central records. So once we can get all that lined out, then the snail mail that we wait on all the time will become an obsolete aspect of our current processes. So that won't be anytime soon. I would see that, you know, a year or more out. So we'll see.
I'm crossing my fingers. Let's hope that happens soon. I think everybody wants to see that.
Yeah, it'd be nice to have a web page that you just click on and everything comes up at your fingers from central records. But that's a lot of money for that type of data system to hold. So we'll see. Well, thank you all. I just wanted to
Chance,
get a check. Yes.
From our perspective and our consultants, the efficiency has been remarkable, and a lot of things on routine matters like slur approvals and blur approvals, it's better than it was before, and you know, the forced electronic communication, which has taken away all the, you know, waiting for the slur letter and all that, is just been unique. And on a personal note, the only thing that I miss is I do miss some occasional personal interactions with you and your staff. You got a lot of people that weren't on your roster 5 years ago.
Yes,
and,
I think it's affecting a lot of people that like to have that physical interaction, you know, and dialogue. And a lot of people, you know, have, you know, decided that it's time for them to retire because of, you know, that change. It does wear on your mental, you know, social awareness. And so I get it. And I don't think that's unique to just TCEQ. I think that's across the United States, maybe across the world, you know. So I just keep my head down and say it'll get better, you know. It'll change.
And the vaccine's coming.
So
well, Chance, and I will echo, you know, it's the staff has been really good about returning phone calls in a timely manner. I think that's been one of the biggest keys in you guys being able to maintain your efficiency. And so kudos to them. All I can say is you need to keep that up, and we'll work through this. Would like to see, you know, we talked about, you know, staff coming out and seeing sites that are under some sort of major mod or permit, you know, and that obviously has been shut down. But hopefully when this is over, we can resume those site visits, because I think those are critical for your staff to really understand complexities at individual sites, because it's not a one size fit all, and it's inherently different in any region across the state. And I'd just be glad when those trips can resume. So
right. Yeah, Yeah, we've hired at least 4 new employees that I've never seen physically. I've seen them over a computer screen. And so not to mention that they haven't been able to actually get out and put boots on the ground and actually see what they see on paper. And that's something that, you know, that's been taken away from us. And we're used to getting, you know, our new staff out there to see, you know, and talk to those operators to understand, you know, what they're up against every day. So when they're reviewing an application, they can grasp, you know, what it is that they're looking at. And we just haven't been able to get them out there to do that yet. And so I'm hoping this year that'll change for us and we'll be able to do that, because we have so many facilities right around the headquarters that are always, you know, have their doors open to us to allow us to do that. And I really do appreciate that. So anyway, enough of that. Y'all have our org chart in your packet. So currently right now, MSW has 2 vacancies. One of those vacancies is on team 1. It's an engineer position. That posting is still pending. So we haven't even posted that one yet. And then the other vacancy is on team 2, and that is a work leader position. And that's actually for our groundwater group. So that posting has closed and we are in the process of preparing to interview for that position. So those are the only 2 vacancies we have right now. Other thing that I always update you on and is the major projects that we have in-house. We're down than our normal. Right now it's 23. We usually are around 30 to 35, but we're at 23. So we pushed a lot out, and maybe that's because we try to get things out faster these days, reducing our time frames. But anyways, we are down at number of 23 major projects, of which 6 of those are registrations. So these are just really about any new permit, any major or limited scope amendment project. Those do not include our reports or modifications or NOIs. Those I don't normally tend to give you a record of those. I mean, because they're in and out. There's hundreds of them. So rulemaking projects. We have 2 in the works. Not anything that has been official yet, but we are looking at Chapter 332, the composting rules, and so we have felt that we need to do some clarifications to the notice aspect of 332, specifically when it comes to how we make adjacent determinations versus affected property owner determinations. So we're looking at making some adjustments and revisions to that language. Since we're going to be in there, we'll be updating minor things like T and RCC and stuff like that. So that one we've kind of tentatively made a rule timeline with that. We're thinking about doing a proposal in the summer, so around July, and then maybe adoption this time next year. So more to come on that, but that one's a little bit more defined on what we're doing. The other one is Chapter 330, but don't get excited. We're not really going to open up Chapter 330 to make a whole bunch of changes to landfills. This is really, we're looking at the idea of separating top 5 facilities, such as processors, into their own chapter, and trying to create an outline for just them and take away things that are applicable to landfills away from them, and because a lot of things don't apply to processors that apply to landfills. So we're looking at that, and we're very much in the early stages of that. And the guy that we have on this is Mr. O'Deal, and he very much understands the program, and so he's taken the first stab at it and has disentangled. He calls it the disentanglement, but he has disentangled top 5 facility requirements from the landfill requirements, and so now he's barking at me and Matthew to talk to him about, other things that we could possibly fix in 330. But I don't want to make it about fixing a bunch of things in 330. I really want to make it about what it would look like for processors in a new chapter. So once we get in a better place on that, we'll visit with you guys more on that and see if we want to take that up and make that more of a formal rulemaking. So just want to make you aware of those things.
Hey, Chance, real quick.
Do you have any questions on that?
Hey, one additional rulemaking that doesn't, it's IHW, it's more industrial and hazardous waste, but it does have an impact to class 1 waste, is we are looking to increase the management fees, the generator and management fees for hazardous and industrial waste. So not a big impact for everybody here, but if you do have class 1 cells, you may see a change there. That one's moving along. That one will probably be proposal in a little bit before the composting one, so probably around May, an adoption later in the year. Thank you, Chance.
Does anybody have any questions? Well, if not, y'all can always email me if something comes up. So guidance and forms update. So I don't know if everyone has signed up for our MSW newsletter, but we mentioned a few things in there about some recent forms that have been in the works for a while. I know some of you guys were part of the group that reviewed them before they got official. But also on that newsletter, if y'all haven't looked at it, we have our TCEQ biennial report to the 87th legislative session. So if y'all are interested in looking at that, it's also on our website if you want to look at that. A lot of information there of what we reported to the legislature for this session. So with that said, I have Steve O'Deal on the line and Kristen Hernandez. One of them is the waste acceptance plan for. We've already had it out there for the type 1 facilities, but this is really about the type 4 facility. So O'Deal, can you go ahead and just give a brief, what the purpose of that form was for, and if they have any questions about it?
Sure. Good morning, and thank you for the kind words, everyone. The form number for the new Type 4 and 4AE waste acceptance plan is TCEQ-20890. It is available. It is live. You'll see some minor formatting changes from the Type 1 form that we need to go back and change at some point. But if you notice in the future the Type 1 form changing, it will be mostly formatting, and some of the rule references have already changed in between the two. The pyrolysis bill changed the definition numbers around, so we'll be updating that. The purpose of this form is to address 330.61B1, which is the waste acceptance rules, to explain what is being accepted and what is being done with those materials when accepted. And our hope is that with the form there will be very few deficiencies issued, because we're asking what we need to know and we're providing what we think is right in some cases. And so you will tell us yes or no what you're accepting, and that will be the answer. This will also be an opportunity for us to see one of the problems I've generally had in reviewing applications is that the information regarding storage and processing units kind of had to be weeded out of the entire application rather than together in a convenient location. So this will, just like the Type 1 and 1AE form, it will have an area that says, what wastes are you processing and what are you processing them in? So we'll have that information. and the form number is 20890.
Yeah, I think we already have that one out there on our website.
Yes, it is. It's up and live.
Yeah. Okay, thanks, Steve. The other one is the Part 2 form, and that one isn't actually out there just yet. It's getting close. I think we're in the process of trying to get a form, get an approval from the agency communications, but we'll have Kristen Hernandez on the line so she can give us an update on that.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. This is Kristen Hernandez. I work under Chance. So I created the Part 2 form for the applications. I will say that we do have an agency number, and it's live in the TCEQ website. We just don't have the link generated yet on the Municipal Solid Waste section. But if you search on our TCEQ website at the very top, you can type in, the form number is 20885. That's 20885. This form was created to cover 33061, as well as the location restrictions that are in subchapter M of 330. And this is for permits and major amendments.
Thanks, Kristen.
Mm-hmm.
Another one, it's not really a form or guidance. It's really about frequently asked questions. And this is in the chapter, subchapter T of 330. For those that aren't familiar, subchapter T is when someone wants to do some type of construction over a closed landfill. And so the reason we did we're working on some frequently asked questions is because we have been getting an uptick in the number of projects for having some type of structure over a closed landfill, mostly out of Dallas. I mean, we do have some out of Houston, but mostly out of the Dallas area. And so we've gotten to the point where these projects are taking longer than necessary. And so we were looking back at some of the deficiencies that we had and saw a common thread. So what the purpose of this is to just kind of get people a little bit further the ball further down the road, so to speak, before they make a submittal to address some of these mistakes that we see anywhere from a notice to addressing a project that also is in remediation. So we're hopeful that that'll help and kind of curb some of the deficiencies that we're seeing and the time associated with that. And right now it's being quality reviewed by staff, and we plan to make it available this month, hopefully, and put it on our website. So just want to make you aware. I know maybe you can pass the information on to let people know, but it's really for consultants that are putting these projects together for developers, and people that are wanting to build a shopping mall or something that's over a closed landfill, and they don't understand why they have to stop and entertain the TCEQ for a couple of months and notice something, and they just don't understand that. So I don't think they have the appreciation for what subchapter T is for. And but anyway, just want to make you aware of that. If you have people out there, developers or folks, let them know that we're working on something to help facilitate that. You have any questions on that? Okay. The last thing that I wanted to touch up base on was y'all had asked about how the electronic checklist was working. That was from our last meeting, and so Diane and I were thinking about that to come up with a way to speak on that. And I guess one of the problems that were posed on how to gather that data was we don't track the number of NODs items within an NOD letter. we only track the number of NODs. So basically, if you look at, a fiscal year prior to doing the electronic checklist, and, we had 22 applications and there was about 60 NODs within that year. So that's about an average of, right under 3 NODs per application. But then I took a fiscal year that was after that electronic checklist was put into place, and in similar applications, so we had 20 applications, and there was about 43 NODs. So that's a little over 2 NODs per application. So there is a trend down, but it's not really apples and apples, because what the electronic checklist was designed to do is to reduce the number of NOD items within an NOD letter. Does that make sense? Because before we were getting, upwards of, 200, 300, 400 NOD items within a letter. And so that checklist is really just to reduce the amount of deficiencies within one letter. So we have seen that go down. We don't track it, but I know that because I review every NOD, I know that I'm not reviewing many NODs anymore with that many items. It's very rarely that we have one that's over 100. So I just wanted to follow up and circle back with you. I don't know if there's a way for us to be able to count each item without having to go back and manually do that, because there's just no way for us to put that into the current system that we have. So anyway, just reporting back based on y'all's request about that. But there is, just on the surface of, comparing a fiscal year before the electronic checklist and after, we are seeing a trend down on the actual number of letters that we're issuing on an application. And that is all that I have to update you in regards to MSW. If anybody has any questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them.
You want to have a question for Chance? I will say that the NOD forms seem to be working, and just from our standpoint on the consultant side, it makes things a lot smoother in-house as well for us to make sure we get everything covered. So no one has any questions for Chance? As far as how long has his beard grown, anything? Well, thanks, Chance.
Well, thank y'all, everybody.
Thank you, Steve, for all you're doing down there, holding down the fort.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chance. We will move on then. And speaking of bearded wonders, David Greer. Is David on?
I am. Thank you. Thank y'all for having me this morning.
Yeah, going to give us an update on the recycling market development plan. So, David, go ahead.
Well, I appreciate it. For the record, I'm David Greer with the External Relations Division at TCEQ, and got a quick update for you on the recycling market development plan. The quick update is everything's going really well, and I'll expand on that with the study the survey has been completed. The study that's going along with the development of that plan is on track. In October, after we met last, we moved forward with hosting the virtual stakeholder forums for that effort. And we had originally planned, you might recall, to host just 3 in-person meetings, one in Austin, one in the DFW area, and one in Houston. But due to the need to move to a virtual environment, we added an additional event and set those up. We hosted 4 virtual meetings in October, where we organized those by commodity type to group together those commodities that would draw in a similar crowd, we felt like. And as a result of that, we were able to get relatively good participation through each of those 4 meetings where we got input on materials and obstacles in the way to look at as we develop the plan moving forward. As you'll recall, in addition to the market development plan, we're required to develop an education program. And I wanted to give you a quick update on that as well, and the fact that we've begun moving forward with some of those efforts. Just to kick off some of that education planning, on November 15th, we kicked off an update to that education program with notice posts celebrating America's Recycles Day, and we called it the Texas Recycling Week. And we did a week of posts and outreach for that effort. We kicked it off with on November 15th with a new education program video, and then, like I said, we shared new information and education outreach each day that week. All of that information is available through the takecareoftexas.org website and their corresponding social media platforms. And it's our goal and our plan to continue that outreach and effort as we move forward. We do have some components of the recycling market development plan to look at development of certain pieces, and of course, as you may recall, in the bill itself and in the statute, there are certain things that we're required to highlight, and we'll be looking at gathering that information so that we can do that as we move forward. With that, I'll entertain any questions if anybody has any.
Well, sounds like you covered everything, David.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm happy to receive any feedback from anybody that has it.
So as far as the virtual meetings you had, you felt like you were able to get the information that you were seeking, and everything went well in that regard?
I do. We had pretty good participation, and those that participated were not shy about sharing opinions and suggestions for improvements. Anecdotally, one thing that we heard a lot of was that folks were very much interested in government incentives for certain commodities, well, for most of the commodities. And so that is something that obviously we'll have to evaluate and see what options we do have in terms of, or see what comes back in terms of proposals for potential action on those suggestions.
Okay, well, I'll give everyone one more chance can't let David off that easy, but no one has anything, we will move on. Thanks, David. Thank you for all you do, and look forward to seeing you down the road.
Thank you. Thank you. And I would encourage everyone to take a look at those materials on takecareoftexas.org.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right. Next, we've got a couple of members from the Business and Program Services section, Santos Oliveras, team leader, and Megan Henson, the work leader. Going to talk about 3 different topics. So I don't know which one of you guys wants to go first, but
yeah, this is Santos, and I'm going to go first on the regional plans. Good morning, everybody. Just to kind of introduce the regional plans. Again, these are the solid waste management regional plans that all 24 COGs are currently developing. This is for many of them, this is the second plan. And the first plan in the past 20 years that they have developed. And so for many of our COGs, the staff, this is the first time that they are going through this process. And so we've collaborated with the Texas Association of Regional Council of Governments to develop tools and also develop templates and formatting for these plans. And we've had a series of meetings, and The participation has really been great, and I think the COGs have really picked up on a lot of things from each other, and it's also given staff a really good insight as to the development of these plans and certainly the work that the Council of Governments are doing for us. Our first meeting was back in September, and this was part of the biannual TARC meeting, and this is when we shared the timeline of the regional plans. We are trying to get the plans in by January 1 of 2022 in order to have all of them adopted and approved by August 31st of 2022. And so during this first meeting, we went over the template, we went over the form, and we're for volume 2, the instructions, and also we're able to answer some questions. And then we came back again in October 8th. We wanted to give them a chance to look over the forms that kind of develop some questions. So we did come back on October 8th, a few weeks later, and went over the volume 1 form. Volume 1 form is a little more general as to the goals and objectives of the regional plan. Volume 2 is a little more, has a little bit more meat to the plan, and actually goes through specific strategies and objectives. And so in October 8th, we came back and went over the volume 1 form, and then we're there to answer questions that they may have from their review of the volume 2 form. And again, had an open discussion. The other thing that we did at that time is we also introduced the smaller group discussions that we planned for throughout the year, almost quarterly. And in December, with smaller groups, 6 COGs to a group, we've got 24 COGs, so we had 4 of these meetings. And those smaller group meetings really did provide us with a lot more information, a lot more discussion. The main things that they wanted to know was really clarification on some of the requirements that are in subchapter O that they have to address in their plans. And so we were able to provide some support on that. Also, we're able to, again, clarify that so much of the information that they're going to be gathering and their objectives and goals really should be going through their solid waste advisory committees within their COGs, because those are the local entities, local stakeholders that will be implementing these goals and strategies. And so a lot of them understood that. A lot of them are now in line with that. Some of the things that staff has done, we have developed a ongoing question and answer document that we have on our webpage, and it's constantly growing as we get questions and calls in from the different COGs on issues related to the development of the plan. We've also have some helpful links related to where they can find data, those kind of things, and we check on those links to make sure that they're operational, haven't broken, and also any new information that we may get, we also post on that web page. Our next meeting with the group will be in February at the next TARC meeting, and I'm sure we'll have updates and discussions on that. One other thing is the question on contractors has come up, and we have about half of the group. Half of the group has hired contractors. Some of them for development of the full plan, some for just gathering data for them, and so it's all really dependent on what the COG needs. And the other half is going at development of the plan with their internal staff, and also, again, going back to their SWACs. And so As of right now, everything looks online to meet the timeline, and that's really our report for there. So it is moving, and again, staff is really open to be resources to help them ask questions. But one of the really good things that these small group meetings have done is that it has been able to get the cogs working together and trying to resolve issues by talking to each other. And so we've seen really, really good activity going on there. So does anybody have any questions?
This is Cheryl. I don't have a question, but I wanted to thank the TCEQ staff for making themselves available. I participated in the small group discussion and I learned a lot. I chatted a lot, but it was really helpful. It gave me some peer exchange people that I didn't know about. So it was really helpful. Thank you.
Anyone else have any questions for Santos?
Okay, thank you all.
Santos, if you would just maybe send a link out to everybody on the forms, the template forms, just so we can kind of look at that. If we have any
we can include that.
later, we could reach out to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Megan?
Yeah, thank you for having me this morning. I love when I get invited to talk tires. It's my favorite subject and my primary subject. So I'm going to give a quick update on a workshop that we held. It's the first of its kind virtual workshop for scrap tire management in Texas. And this really falls in line with our goals that were outlined in the 5-year plan that was released in February of 2020. So we're already moving on that plan, and the first workshop was a huge success. We actually think that the virtual aspect made the turnout better. We had over 110 attendees, and they were really a lot of good participation, a lot of good feedback, and we did rely heavily on the COGS to get the word out about the first workshop because the tire program is still growing and we don't have a listserv yet. So we're relying on any resource, anyone who will get the word out about our activities. So thank you to all the COGS who helped with that. The first workshop, we had 9 presenters, and we focused on the issues with scrap tire management from the regulatory side. So we had this different cities, counties, TCEQ regions, and then also the scrap tire program present on the challenges that they face, but also some successes that they've had with good scrap tire management, remediating scrap tire sites. And really it was a great perspective. We had presenters from West Texas, East Texas, the border, Central Texas. I mean, I think the panhandle might have been covered somewhere in there. So we really wanted to get to find the similarities that everyone faces with scrap tire management, but to also really have that collaboration. That's what we were looking for. And I think we achieved that with the amount of turnout and then the responses from the survey that we sent after the workshop. The survey, we had some good takeaways that we're working on. So one thing, again, was finding the similarities and the issues that are happening around the state. That would be things you're familiar with that I've talked on and my successors have talked about, or anyway, the people previous to me talked about as well, like illegal dumping, unauthorized tire sites, lack of enforcement options, different vector infestations like mosquitoes and rodents, and then also one big challenge is, depending on the region, limited or lack of authorized facilities in the region. So, you know, that gave us a good sense that what we're focusing on in the 5-year plan and where we're the conversations we're having are grounded, and these are concerns that other areas in the state are struggling with as well. And then also some things that we can provide, that the TCEQ can provide other than funding, are different examples of ordinances for cities and counties if they want to enact more strict regulations than what TCEQ has, then finding a good list or examples of city and county ordinances. That was part of the presentations from the different cities and counties, the ones that had the ordinances, they did present on them. So we do plan to get a list together. That way people can at least have a starting point if they want to get one in their area. Other things are just basic educational and outreach material. So that's something we're actually working on right now, specifically for generators and transporters, just letting the tire shops know that there are regulations that they're supposed to meet. We found that a lot of them just aren't aware of what they're expected to do. So we're working on those, and that really ties into, again, the 5-year plan of getting those resources together. And it was great to hear from the attendees the resources that we need, or they need, so we can focus our efforts. And we do have a second workshop in the works. And I forgot to mention, it was the TCEQ and U.S. Tire Manufacturing Association. We partnered on the workshop, so that was really helpful to have them provide the national perspective as well. And they have a little bit more data to get into the nitty-gritty, where Texas falls in line with the other states. So we are partnering with them again for this next workshop. We don't have a date yet. We're thinking April or May. We're trying to get through the legislative session and don't want to put too much on our plate. It will be virtual again. And if it's something that you're interested in, you can email me or our tires proxy box and we can put you on the list. And we're going to change, the first workshop was focused on more of the regulatory side with the cities, counties, and TCEQ presenting. And for the second one, we want to hear more from the industry. So what's working for them? How do they find success in this market? So we're going to put out a call for presenters, and we're hoping to hear from cement kilns who use energy recovery or tire-derived fuel, as well as the crumb rubber manufacturers, major processors, land reclamation projects. We have a handful in Texas, but they seem to be growing in popularity. So just hearing from those operators, as well as recyclers and waste cleanup professionals. So we're hoping to get a pretty wide perspective from the scrap tire industry. So since we don't have a listserv, we'll probably send out an announcement through the MSW listserv. That's been really helpful that we can piggyback on with them, but we'll also post the announcement on our scrap tire website when it's time, when we're asking for those presenters. And so just stay tuned for more updates. We're really excited about that. Before I move on to the annual report, are there any questions about the workshop? All right. As I stated, we're really excited because with the 5-year plan in place, it's given us more focus, and already seeing us increase the collaboration and partnerships is very rewarding. So for the annual report, 2020 annual report, we just mailed yesterday 568 letters to registered transporters, scrap tire facilities, and storage sites. So the reports are due March 1st. We encourage anyone who's registered to provide their annual report before March 1st. That way you don't get a second letter from us saying, hey, we really, really do want your information. One of the things identified in the 5-year plan was increasing the compliance rate for reporting. And this is something that we kind of struggle with. So if you have ideas on how to get an increase in compliance, that would be great. Please let me know. You can email me directly or the tires box. We've talked about listserv, emailing people. Right now, we really rely heavily on the letters that we mail out, and then also people remembering and checking our website. So if you have friends in the scrap tire community or colleagues or anything, please let them know. We really need that data. It is required in rule, but we don't want to go down that route. We really want to keep it voluntary, where we're asking for it and we're getting it, and there's no sticks at this point being used. So we're hoping to have that report. We get all the data in by March 1st. We should have the report finalized by early June.
Great. Well, maybe at our July meeting, we could have an update on that then.
Absolutely.
Great. Does anyone have any questions for Megan?
Yeah, I just had one question. Megan, you talked about not having a listserv, but sending out the letters, is there a way to do email reminders to the folks that's, just a little easier to send and do that? Because I know I sometimes am not the best at doing something right away, but if I get an email, saying here's the deadline, it reminds me on the second one or the third one. So.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I think part of the struggle is we don't have email addresses, but that doesn't mean we can't email the ones that provided an email address in their application or that we have on file. So yeah, thank you for that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, even if you only have 300 out of the 578 or whatever you said, at least it's something and it's going to help with compliance, and you can just gradually grow that list, hopefully over time.
Absolutely.
Well, thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. And like I said, look forward to getting an update from you later this summer. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
We will move along to our next agenda item with Brittany Rosenberg, the Executive Director of State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. So Brittany, if you're on, you have the floor.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed sitting in on this meeting. I know a lot of you from either previous engagements or from STAR. Several of you are either board members or mission partners, and we are, as always, grateful for your efforts and support. So I'm here to talk today very briefly about the potential impacts of the Bazel Convention on Texas recycling markets, because while this is very important, a lot of it is up in the air and time will tell. So, of course, that is us, STAR, and the Bazel Convention very basically controls transboundary movement of hazardous wastes and scrap and waste recycling, specifically plastics. It has 170 member countries, of which the US is significantly absent. The intention of it was to protect human health and the environment. It originally was adopted back in 1989 after a few years of convening, began enforcement in 1992. In 2019, at the end of 2019, it was amended, and those go into enforcement now, January 2021. It works on a basis of a few concepts, the first being prior informed consent, meaning that for most agreements, if not all agreements, there needs to be prior informed consent between the two trading parties, especially from members to non-members, but in most cases from member to member as well. And what that means is just both parties are understanding exactly what is being sold and what is being purchased. Also, the concept of an environmentally sound manner, and that if it is set up to be recycled or if it is set up to be disposed of as waste, it must be done so in an environmentally sound manner. And it does offer recommendations for that, but another interesting part of Bazel is that it is built mostly on self-management and self-determination, meaning that each party member gets to decide for themselves what is hazardous waste, what is federal, what their regulations and their governmental regulations on their waste is, and each party has to respect each other's definitions. Also, it's just the idea that you are going to control your own waste, handle your own waste, and restrict what you export. So it controls a lot of things, but the two biggest ones are Annex 1 and Annex 2, which can be loosely defined and generally defined as hazardous waste or household waste. So this is going to be MSW and the grand majority of recycling content that we all deal with. What's not controlled is very specific, small list of types of materials that have to be single type, pre-sorted, clean, uncontaminated, and intended for recycling. They cannot be intended for waste. So those, and they must be, if it's mixed PE, PP, and PET, it must be headed for separation and separate recycling at the trade destination. So the two amendments, or the several sections of amendments, but they can be divided conceptually into the ban and the plastic, scrap, and waste amendments. And I will try to keep this on time. Basically, the biggest thing to understand and how this is going to most likely affect Texas and US recycling markets is that the focus has become obviously on pre-sorted, clean materials. And that even though hazardous waste was already regulated by the OECD agreement, which is an agreement that we have ratified in the US, unlike the Bazel agreement, it adds some extra specifications. So what to note here, if it is pre-sorted, clean, uncontaminated scrap that is intended for an environmentally sound recycling method, that is the only kind that does not require prior notice under this amendment. So the U.S. has some existing bilateral agreements, including an agreement that was signed and passed through with Canada late 2020, which removes a prior notice requirement. It basically just establishes a standard mandate between the U.S. and Canada and defines what we consider environmentally sound management. So we also have an agreement with Mexico, which allows us to import waste and recycling and export exclusively recycling. Costa Rica, Malaysia, and the Philippines, we import waste and recycling. So the potential impacts of this and the important part, and what you're all, I'm sure, hoping to hear, obviously there's going to result in an emphasis on source separation. Anytime that there's an increase in regulation, there's going to be an increase in costs, an increase in processing costs and labor involved. And usually that means that there's going to be a little bit of an upset to begin with, for sure. And it also creates sort of a vacuum. The markets will follow the path of least resistance. So anything that requires less regulation, less restrictions, specifically source separation, is going to become, I think, much bigger. And I've already seen it become much bigger in anticipation of Bazel, especially in the North Texas region. I can attest to that firsthand. I think we're also going to see increased landfilling. That's just going to be a continued trend, especially as municipalities bear the brunt of this also affecting recycling markets, at least initially. There will be a lower price of feedstock. And I do think at the same time, though, this opens up a lot of opportunities. That lower price of feedstock and a lot of the new technology that has come out recently is going to open up a lot of opportunity for entrepreneurship and for small and big business to grow pretty quickly as far as domestic manufacturing. Texas specifically, I think, is going to see a lot of this because we have the land, we have the labor, and I think that we're open to it and we're open to the manufacturing. But contamination is on all caps, as it is definitely going to become the name of the game. Also, this has already obviously been talked about, but the Recycling Market Development Plan, we are going to see the results of that in September of this year. And so that certainly is going to have some effects and hopefully will help leverage this opportunity in the right direction. For more information, there are many resources on the Bazel Convention, but I listed the two most obvious ones available, and I will take questions if there are any.
Thank you, Brittany. Anyone have a question for Brittany they'd like to ask? Well, you covered it all well, Brittany. Thank you very much. And thank you for spending the time with us this morning and presenting that. It's good information.
No, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to sit in. It was great. I enjoyed listening to the meeting. It was great information. And please, everyone, feel free, reach out about anything. I am very excited about taking over as the new executive director of the State of Texas Alliance for Recycling. And I would be very excited to have any of your input on a number of subjects. So thank you.
Well, yeah, congratulations in the new gig. And we will probably have you back in the months to come as you get some more and more of this data pulled together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys. Well, we're on the short rows now. I guess we will in the packet highlight or packet that you received, you should have gotten the meeting minutes from our October 8th, 2020 meeting. And if you've had a chance to look at those, or if you need a minute or two, why don't you take those, and then at some point, if somebody is ready to make a motion to approve those, feel free to go ahead and do that. So if anyone's ready to, are there any comments I would call for first? If you'd like to bring those forward, if not, if someone would like to make a motion.
This is Jeff Mayfield. I'll make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone care to make the second?
This is Dave Yankee. I'll second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? If not, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 And it passes. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Action items. Do we have anything, Diane, that's on your list?
Let's see. The only thing I indicated was that you asked for the forms that was just, I guess, for the council forms, and I think they've already been posted in the chat.
They have.
Okay, for volume 1 and volume 2 forms, so that's done. And I think, let me see if I start something else. Chance, did you catch anything? Oh, the main action is that, Holly, you asked for the council to review the stakeholder list by next Thursday and to respond back to the email that I sent for any feedback.
Yeah. And let's make that as a hard date. And if there's any deletions off that list, I would say, you know, that's your opportunity to suggest those to Charlie as well.
Hey, Diane, would it be possible for you to send that list out again in Word? Because it might
Oh,
be.
yes. Yes.
Just do it in, yeah, we'll do it in track changes and shoot it back to you. We should just send it to Diane or to you, Holly.
I'll go ahead and send it to Diane.
Okay.
No, that's fine. In fact, this morning I had to create it in Word myself, so I do have the list.
Great. Thank you.
And I would, yes, tracking changes would be great, and feedback within the table or comments, however y'all want to do it, would be good. Okay, I think, Holly, I think those are the only 2 items that I marked.
Okay.
Chance followed up on the action from last meeting, so he gave y'all an update on the NODs. So I think we're good.
Good. Thank you very much. Well, we'll go
Unless you
ahead
have
and,
something else marked. Do you have anything else marked, Holly?
No, I don't. I'm good off of my list.
Okay.
I will open the floor then for any public comments. If anyone out there that's not on the council, if they'd like to make any comments, this is your opportunity. So, hearing no comments, I want to thank everyone for showing up this morning for 2021. Happy New Year to everyone, and hoping for hoping for an in-person meeting before the end of this fiscal year. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and see how that develops as the time rolls on. So if not, our next meeting is scheduled for April the 8th, 2021, same time, and I'm assuming unless something changes drastically, same format. But hopefully by then, many of us will have been vaccinated and we will be moving along with our lives in a normal fashion. So that's all I have. So for everyone, thank you again, and we'll catch up down the road, April the 8th. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
everybody. Bye.
I'm ending the recording now.